Welcome to the Blue Dragon Guild, a channel all about Dungeons and Dragons. I'm Baron.
I'm Chris.
If you never want to miss a D&D video from us, make sure to subscribe to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be discussing the most recent Unearthed Arcana that has been released, and it deals with Psionics.
So Psionics have been around for a long time. I think at least since 2nd edition, actually, upon my quick reading. I know for sure they were big in 3rd edition, and they are sort of interesting. They're not quite magic, but they're not quite not magic. Basically, it's mental energy, and you use it to augment attacks and defense and just give you quirky abilities. And now, in 5th edition, it has been more streamlined, and they've become sort of spell effect replications, still not quite magic, but they are a lot more either offensive or defensive now and a lot more simplified, whereas in older editions they were a little complicated to try to run. So far in this UA, they have made it as a class path for the fighter, the rogue, and the sorcerer. And they seem pretty cool just at first glance. And the first one I will talk about is the fighter. And this is the one I'm actually the most excited to try because it is the simplest, I think, to run for even new players to run.
Yeah, I agree with
And this martial archetype is called the Psi Knight. And basically the general idea is you use your mental energy to augment your weaponry and your different attacks and even a little bit of defense. So the way most of these work is it gives you a talent option. And similar to other classes that give you a bunch of different options under one name, this just gives you a couple and you get to choose which one you do. So for instance, at 3rd level, the Psi Knight gets psionic talent and you can use it in these ways. For protection, using Protective Field, which lets you or another creature you can see within 30 feet of you, when they take damage, you can use a reaction to roll your psionic talent die, which I'll explain in a moment. To reduce that damage by the number rolled, plus your intelligence modifier. It's always minimum 1, though, so you can't actually fail it. So it gives them a momentary shield of defense, which is really neat, as a reaction. You can also use this ability for Psi-powered leap. When you make a high or long jump, you can roll that die and extend the distance of the jump a number of feet equal to twice the number rolled, plus twice your intelligence modifier, minimum of 1 extra foot. The extra distance does cost you 1 foot of movement, but you're still getting a very good leap, which is really interesting because I don't think a lot of people utilize, at least what I've seen, utilize the long jump really anymore.
Yeah. Even the jump spell, I think most people are like, we don't need that. But.
Right, but I've noticed in our past encounters fairly recently, when you really need to make that happen, this would be incredible.
Yeah, it would.
And lastly is Telekinetic Strike, which is my favorite one. You can propel your attacks with telekinetic force. Once on each of your turns, immediately after dealing damage to a target within 30 feet, with a weapon attack, you can roll your psionic talent die and deal force damage to them equal to that number. So this is going to work on range, it's going to work on melee. You can throw a weapon and it'll work. And pretty much nothing is immune to force damage. I mean, there's a few things, but it's real hard to find something that is immune to force damage. So that's pretty incredible, especially since this is just a straight die roll, add the damage.
Yeah, I think that'd be really, really fun, especially with like the Graviturgy Wizard subclass that came out in the Wild Mount book. Say they have that thing that as a reaction they can increase the force of your weapon and increase the damage by 1d10. So you combine these two together. I mean, that's just more damage.
Right, and the new feature, as I said, is called a psionic talent die. It's a d6. It's just something a little extra that you have to manage, but it's nothing too major. So on your turn for these different abilities, you roll that d6. After you roll it, it decreases one die size. So a D6 becomes a D4. It never drops below a D4. And this is supposed to represent you blowing through that resource of psionic energy. And if you, on that die roll, if you roll a 6, it becomes the D4, like automatically. Mm-hmm. So you roll max, great for you. You'll do extra damage. You'll do whatever max ability you had, but it's going to drop to a D4 because you spent that resource. Yeah. However, if it's a D4 already and you roll max damage, it's unusable until after a long rest. So because you've spent your fuel reserve of power. The neat thing about this, however, is if you roll bad. So if you roll a 1, you think you're getting less damage output. However, by doing that, it increases one die size after the roll up to its max. So if you roll a 1 on a D4, it instantly becomes a D6 again because you didn't use as much power. Yep. Now you've reserved that power. And then it doesn't just automatically be spent forever and you have to wait till a long rest again. You only have to wait for the rest if you've dropped it, basically max damage on a D4. So D4 to D6 is the current cap on that, but that's still pretty cool. And it's just, to me, it's a neat little manipulation thing. It's similar to the Battle Master where they give die out. This one you keep for yourself, and you just sort of spin it down. So I think anybody that's used to like the magic mechanic or tracking health on things, that's just going to be one other thing that you are used to doing and used to manipulating. Yeah. And it's really cool to be like, man, I might want to roll a 1 right now to get all my power back to use it again. Yeah. Like, that's a really cool... I think it's just a neat little mechanic.
Yeah, because normally we think, like you said, 1, oh man, that's rolling bad, but I like that this is kind of in that reverse, kind of a second edition kind of feel.
Right, and after you have a long rest, your psionic die resets to its normal size anyway. Yeah. That's like the end of that. Yeah. And lastly, there's this thing called psi replenishment. Now, all the classes get this as well that do this. It's a bonus action. You can calm your mind and restore your psionic die to its starting size. Then you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. So if you really sort of the end of combat, or you're like, I don't think I need to use it again right now, you get a bonus action, use it, return it back to a D6, and the next day you start all over again. Yep. So that's pretty cool. And then as you level up, these other things you'll be able to use it in different ways, such for movement, for more attacking power, for resistance to poison, resistance to psychic. That's super cool, that sort of thing. And it just goes up from there all the way up to a master level, which lets you use telekinesis with no components. Yeah, that's really neat. Yeah, that's cool. And I think it's going to be cool because this is a cool alternative to the Eldritch Knight. Yeah. It's sort of like that's the arcane version, and this is sort of a like cousin to that. Yeah. Which is neat. So that was the fighter in brief on the Psi Knight that is now out. Baron, I believe, is going to talk to us about the Soul Knife, which is the rogue option for this.
Yes. Soul Knife is a subclass. It's been around for a little while. They had it back in 3.0, 3.5. I know we had kind of dabbled a little with psionics in 3.5, but like Chris said, they were a little difficult to understand. I think only one of our friends had managed to master it. Shout out to you, Gavin. But I really like the Soul Knife. Their psionic talent that they get at 3rd level, they get psi-bolstered knack. When your non-psionic training fails you can tap into your power to help. If you fail an ability check using a skill or tool with which you have proficiency, you can roll your talent die and add the number rolled to the check, potentially turning a failure into a success. It kind of bleeds into some other things that the rogue can get just to kind of bump up those skills even more. They have the ability Psychic Whispers. and you can establish telepathic communication between yourself and others. It even says here, perfect for quiet infiltration, or if you're a little bit of a trouble causer, getting into the mind of a guard over there and driving him crazy. When you roll your talent die, you choose a number of creatures you can see, up to a number of creatures equal to the number rolled. For 1 hour, the chosen creatures can speak telepathically with you, and you can speak telepathically with them. This will not work if they cannot speak any languages. But you do not need to share a common language to use this ability, which I think is great, especially if you get in those situations where you're in a place and you have no idea any of the language that anybody's speaking. The other ability they get at 3rd level is Psychic Blades. This is basically where they get their name from, the Soul Knife. You can manifest your psionic power as shimmering blades of psychic energy. When you are about to make a melee attack or a ranged weapon attack against a creature, you can manifest a psychic blade from your free hand and make the attack with that blade. This magic blade is a simple melee weapon with the finesse and thrown properties. Has a normal range of 60 feet and no long range. On a hit, it deals psychic damage equal to 1d6 plus the modifier you use for the attack roll. The blade vanishes immediately after it hits or misses a target, and it leaves no mark on its target after it deals damage. After you attack with the blade, you can make a melee or ranged attack with a second psychic blade as a bonus action on the same turn, as long as your other hand is free to create it. The damage of this one is a 1d4 instead of a d6. One thing I kind of wanted to point out here, it took me a little bit to kind of like work through this one. You don't get basically, an attack with your rapier and this psychic blade. This attack is foregoing any other weapon attack that you would use. At first I was sitting there thinking, I was like, a d6, I mean, when you compare it to the d8 of a rapier, it's not that great. But as the Soul Knife advances in level, there are some additional things it gets as a benefit when you use the Psychic Blade. Like at level 9, they get the feature Soul Blades. The blades are an expression of your suffered soul, giving you finer control over them in the following ways. There's homing strikes, which if you make an attack roll with your blades and miss the target, you can roll your talent die and add the number rolled to the attack roll. If it causes your attack die to hit, your psionic talent die decreases by 1 size regardless of the number rolled. Then there's psychic teleportation, which is the one I like the most. If your talent die is available, you can hurl your blades to magically transport yourself to another location. As a bonus action, manifest one of your blades, throw it in an unoccupied space you can see up to a number of feet away equal to 5 times the highest number on your psionic talent die. You then teleport to that space, the blade vanishes, and your talent die decreases by 1 size. Anything that can give you some extra mobility on the battlefield is great to use, I always feel. 13th level, they get Psionic Veil. Basically, they can magically become invisible. It's for 10 minutes until you dismiss it. No action required for that dismissal. This is kind of one of those things that Chris talked about in the beginning of the video, that it's not magic, but yet it is kind of magic. It's in that weird in-between space, because this is, you magically become invisible. So if someone's got a robe of eyes, they can still spot you, and they can cast Dispel Magic, thus terminating your invisibility. Finally, at 17th level, the Soul Knife gets their capstone ability, Rend Mind. You can sweep your psychic blades directly through a creature's mind. When you use your blade to deal sneak attack damage to a creature, you can force them to make a wisdom saving throw If they fail the save, they are then stunned until the end of your next turn. So you can do a good deal of damage with this, especially stunning them. Stunning is one of those really fun conditions, which if you want to learn about, you can check out our video right up here. Yeah, right up here.
So something I think is interesting with this, that the thing you just read sort of reminded me about it. When we were talking about how, yeah, you get low damage with Psychic Blades, but you'll still get Sneak Attack.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So early level, it's still really good. And since it's manifested like out of thin air, you have a weapon now. Like I have nothing, and then boom, weapon.
Yeah.
The situations are endless. If you get stripped of your weapons, if you get arrested, if you get whatever, boom, you are always armed, and I think that's neat. And it doesn't deny you sneak attack damage. So you could still do a lot of output at 3rd level, and no one suspects you of being able to do it, because it's not like, if you see a guy in the street, he's definitely a wizard. You're just some guy.
Yeah.
And then, bam, that's super cool. And like you said, it really just ramps up every so many levels. Like, it gets better and better. And I think this one so far has the best progression of like one ability. Like the blades get better, and it gets a little better each time, whereas you have to work for it a little more, I think, with the fighter. But they're both so far really solid options and very different from each other, and I like that.
Yeah, I do as well. Chris, what's going on with that sorcerer?
So the last one that they did in this Unearthed Arcana is the Sorcerer Psionic Soul. And this one's interesting for a few reasons. One, for story. Sorcerers always get sort of a neat little sorcerer's origin idea, and I'll talk about those. There's some new options for that, which is cool. Or you can make your own, of course.
Always.
But the Psionic Soul in different settings is what I think is interesting about this. In Githyanki and Githzerai, they're like revered as almost god casters. So that's neat for your story if that's the kind of thing you do. A lot of astral travel. That could be a fun. It'll fit great right in your party. If you guys like Eberron, I know that's a big popular book with a lot of people right now. They also do. This is like the top tier of what people want to be. Is, oh man, you can use your mind to do magic. And then in other settings as well, sometimes they're revered, sometimes they're hated, sometimes they just don't know what they are. And that's really cool. And even in the Feywild, there's like some psionic awakening things. So that's really cool. But you get to decide how you came up with this. I know every D&D character you kind of decide, but this one is, boom, why are you this power?
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool. And they gave a new table of like 10 new potential options. You can roll for them. You can pick for them. The 2 I like out of the 10 the best for the new psionic origin is on the chart number 2, a psychic wind from the astral plane carried this energy into your being. When you use your powers now, you start to sparkle a little bit.
Ooh.
That's just fun. That's a fun little... And nobody knows why. The other one that sort of fits in with what's going on in our game right now is, deep in a forest touched by the Feywild, you drank from a glimmering stream, and now your mind shines with power. Beasts and Fey creatures are often now friendly to you because they can see that inner psychic power. You could use that, again, that could be the tide turner of a fight.
Yeah.
If you're fighting like a hag or some other Fey creature, and they're like, wait a minute... Are you a bad guy? Like, what's happening? That's super cool. Right. Some of the other ones are sort of, there's like far realm ideas. There's basic ideas. There's just you wake up one day and you have it. But it's all up to you. But I thought those 2 were really cool and different. And it's definitely going to make your character stand out in a setting. And I think that's really neat. Just like the other class options, they get the psionic talent die. It's once again a D6. However, these talent options are a little different. The first option you get is psionic discovery. So after meditating for 10 minutes, which can be done during a rest, that's a very important factor, you get to roll the die. And choose a sorcerer spell of a level for which you have spell slots that is a divination or enchantment school. You now know this chosen spell for a number of hours equal to that number rolled. So as long as you have the spell slot, you just get it for those many hours. That's really cool. Super good with divination, especially. That's really good control and like kind of odd, not really time manipulation because that's another story, but there's little things you can do to like tweak and buff your opponents that I think are underutilized powers.
Yeah.
And this lets you do that for X number of hours, up to 6 hours if you roll max. The other is psychic sorcery. When you cast a spell, you can use your mind to alter it. You roll that talent die, and the spell then requires no verbal component. And if you rolled the level or higher on pips on the die, you now don't need the rest of those components. So that's super good if you don't have a focus. It's super good if there's some weird way that your DM is just not letting you do stuff, or you can't through other spells, or your hands are full, essentially. Like on some cases, you can still do this with no components whatsoever, verbal, somatic, or other. And lastly, they can use telepathic speech. It's a bonus action to choose one creature you can see, any creature, and roll your talent die. For a number of hours equal to the number you rolled, you and that creature could speak telepathically with each other while you two are within a mile or a number of miles of each other equal to that number. So if you roll a 5, you're within 5 miles of each other, and all you need to do to understand each other is speak mentally in a language you each know.
That's cool.
So you do have to know the same language, but with your party members, if you want to be sneaky, if you want to do some cool communication or fun RP, this is really neat. And the telepathic connection ends early if you do it to perform it on another creature, just like most spells will end if you do it twice. So this could be really fun, especially cross-classing with different things, messing with your friends in the game, doing it with enemies. Like, you can do a lot of like little, especially with the common languages, like you could do a lot between this and the rogue, a lot of mental manipulation with stuff.
If you cross class with the rogue, then you just get all kinds of telepathy.
It's wild. Like, you just do whatever. And a lot of creatures are telepaths, like some of the baddies, like mid-level baddies. You could even do it with them, and they're not going to know what to do with that. Yeah. And just like the rest of the classes get, there is the changing of the die size. It works the same for everybody. So if you master one, you master them all.
Yep.
And then it has the replenishment as a bonus action. You can chill out, bonus action, get your die back, but then you can't use it for a day. That's okay, because other things you get to do, if you really kind of save your power up, there's psychic strikes that lets you expend spell slots to get more damage. You can do this thing called mind over body, which is neat. It's at 14th level. You use this energy, it flows through your body. As a bonus action, you get to roll the die, spend sorcery points, so those work in conjunction with this, to magically transform yourself for a number of hours equal to the number rolled. Until the transformation ends, you gain a benefit. For each point you spent, mind you, you can do a few different, like, interesting things, such as see invisible creatures, gain flying speed, swimming speed. You can become like rubber. It states that you become pliable. You can interpret it as you wish, to move through any space as narrow as 1 inch without squeezing. So almost gas, but you're still solid. And you can spend... It's wild. It's like silly putty.
You're almost an ooze.
Yeah, and you got to spend movement to escape from non-magical restraints or being grappled, but the fact that it lets you say that, you can do that. So if you get grappled, shackled, whatever, you just turn to goo and get out. And nothing is going to stop that.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, that's super fun. And their max ability, Psychic Aura, if the die is available, I think that seems to be the trend with all of them. You have to have it available right then. You can unleash this power for a bonus action for 30-foot radius for 1 minute, or until you're incapped. Whenever a creature starts its turn in that area around you that's affected, it makes like an aura, or they move into it for the first time on a turn. So double whammy there. Roll the die, and they take psychic damage equal to the number rolled plus your charisma this time. This is like one of the only ones that uses charisma instead of intelligence, which is cool, especially for that.
Yeah.
And if they take the damage, their speed is halved. So they move in, boom, take damage. They start there, boom, take damage. And there's a lot of class combo power.
Oh, yeah.
To lock them up, and you could just make, like, just taking the damage. And once again, like force damage, it is super rare to find something immune to psychic.
Yeah.
Like, it's happening, and you could just devastate. That is at 18th level, so maybe at 18th level, your big bad probably isn't going to take that much damage, but it might be the decision maker.
Yeah, oh yeah.
You know, that's super awesome, and I really like this for a sorcerer, and I'm usually not a huge sorcerer guy, but this is just more control, and I think that's really, really neat.
I agree. Out of all the different sorcerer subclasses that there are, this might be my favorite one.
It's in my top two or three at least.
Yeah.
Elemental stuff was super cool, and that could be, you know, a whole other conversation. But this one alone, out of the box, very, very neat for sorcerer.
Agreed. Up next in this Unearthed Arcana, they have included 3 new spells. It is Intellect Fortress, Mind Sliver, and Mind Thrust. The Mind Thrust spell is a 2nd level enchantment. You thrust a lance of psychic disruption into the mind of one creature you can see within range. They must make an intelligence saving throw. On a failed save, they take 3d6 psychic damage, and it can't take a reaction until the end of its next turn. Moreover, on its next turn, it must choose whether it gets a move, an action, or a bonus action. It gets only one of the 3. On a successful save, they take half damage, and none of those other effects happen to them. This is kind of, what, like you said, one of those control kind of spells. I like it. It deals.
Oh yeah.
It deals really good damage for the 3d6, and you know, restricting what they do on their turn is always amazing.
The one I like out of the 3, they all seem good.
Yes.
But the one I really like, and they sort of took this when they had the Mystic class, because now you may notice there's no more Mystic.
Yes.
They did away with that to make these classes better.
Yes.
And balance the game, I guess, a little more. But one of the things they sort of kept, this is sort of a hodgepodge of things, is Intellect Fortress. This is a 4th level abjuration spell, so it's a little like higher up. However, it takes 1 action to cast. It's a 30-foot range. It's only verbal, so that's neat.
Good.
And it's concentration up to an hour, which is very good. For the duration, you or one willing creature you can see within this range has resistance to psychic damage. Fantastic.
Yeah.
As well as advantage on intelligence, wisdom, and charisma throws. Even better.
Oh, yeah.
And at higher level, when you cast it yet using a 5th level spell slot or more, you can target an additional creature for each level above 4th.
That's great.
Yep, so it just goes up and up. Those creatures, however, if you do more than one, have to be within 30 feet of each other. But you could be like, cool, all your mental saves help.
Yeah.
And that's really awesome.
Especially if you're running a campaign where psionics, psychic things are more prevalent. This is going to be one of those spells that's like, I have to take this or else my party's probably going to, you know, suffer a lot more than they probably want to.
Right, and you can take this for sure as a sorcerer or a wizard,
Yep.
which makes sense, but sometimes, you know, some things don't cross. But like you said, if you're fighting Gith, if you're fighting like weird aberration, far realm stuff, psychic damage is real bad all the time, and this protection and advantage in the same go.
Yep.
Concentration up to an hour. Like, that's pretty fantastic.
The last spell is Mind Sliver. It's a cantrip available to Sorcerer, Warlock, Wizard. You drive a disorienting spike of psychic energy into the mind of one creature you can see within range. Target must make an intelligence saving throw. If they fail the save, they take 1d6 psychic damage. And the first time it makes a saving throw before the end of your next turn, it must roll a d4 and subtract the number rolled from the save. So if you have several party members that are throwing out saves, save spells, different kind of things, this is going to be one of the great things that you can throw out at them, just because it'll reduce their roll, and you know, if they fail the save against that fireball, more damage.
Right. And the reverse of that is, if you're a player and you're fighting things of that nature, save spells can be kind of hard for the bad guy to save against, and sometimes, and this is just, you're not going to guarantee still a hit, but it is better, I think, to debuff them sometimes than to just try to up your attack. Consistently making them bad with spells like this, like, you can do a lot of cool things and help the party out a lot.
Absolutely. Next up is the new feats that were included in this UA. There are 5 of them. First up, we're going to talk about the Wild Talent. This feat is available to anybody, whereas the other ones, you either need to have the Wild Talent feat or have a Psionic talent feature, which would be one of the 3 subclasses. With Wild Talent, you awaken your psionic potential, which enhances your mind or body. Increase one ability score of your choice by 1 to a maximum of 20 to represent this enhancement. Right off the bat, you're getting a stat bump, which is always phenomenal in this game.
And it's your choice.
Yeah.
So that's super cool.
Yeah. You harbor a wellspring of psionic power within yourself, and energy that ebbs and flows as you channel it in various ways. The power is represented by your psionic talent die, like we discussed earlier. And there are 2 different ways that you can kind of use this. The first one is psi boosted ability. When you make an ability check with the ability increased by this feat, you can roll your talent die to add the number that was rolled to the check. You can choose to do so before or after rolling your d20, but before you know whether it succeeded or failed. I think that pretty much just speaks for itself. Anything that can help you pass your checks, always great.
Right. The other one that you can use is called Psi Guided Strike. Once on each of your turns, when you hit with an attack roll that uses the ability increased by this feat, you can roll your talent die after you make the damage roll, then replace one of the damage dice in that roll with the number rolled on the talent die. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it is.
Because you can now, I mean, you know, you get the choice. You have to use that ability, so it's, you know, if you're fighting, you're probably going to buff strength or dex, depending on what your class is. Or, you know, it could work for monk, it could work for fighter, it can work for anybody. And then you know, I roll all my damage dice. They're probably multiple kinds. I roll, you know, a 4, but I roll a 5 on the talent die. I'm getting that extra damage.
Yeah.
That's really neat. I like that. And it just, you know, as long as you just have to hit with it, and it happens. And it could be any attack. It does not have to be a weapon attack.
Yep.
So spell attacks, in a lot of spells, you kind of get a hodgepodge of dice types. So this is super useful for that, to always edge in that little bit of damage, because 1 or 2 points might kill the enemy. And just like everything else, it does have, you change the size again from a 6 to a 4 and back based on rest or the number you rolled. Yep. You roll high, comes low. If you roll low, it goes high. It's easy, just 50-50 flip every time. And then as a bonus action, once again, you can restore it back to its size for a day. So I know that seems like a lot, but once you get into it, it's really not. It's, do you want to buff this ability? Do you want to buff this attack? It's always either sort of an offense or a defense manipulation. Yeah. And I appreciate that once you get down to it, it's one or the other. That's an easy decision for every combat encounter that you might have.
Oh, yeah. The next feat, telekinetic. The rest of these all have the same prerequisite. You have to have that psionic talent feature or the wild talent feat. With this, you learn to move things with your mind, and you gain the following benefits. Increase your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma by 1 to a max of 20. You learn the Mage Hand cantrip, and you can cast it without verbal or somatic components. And you can make your Mage Hand, the Spectral Hand, invisible. If you already know this spell, its range increases by 30 feet when you cast it. Its spellcasting ability is the one used for the feat.
Right.
As a bonus action, you can try to telekinetically shove one creature you can see within 30 feet of you. When you do so, roll your talent die, and the target must succeed on a strength saving throw or be moved toward you or away from you a number of feet equal to 5 times the number you rolled. A creature can willingly fail this save. So if you need to get one of your friends out of the way, just be like, yep, push me.
Wow, I did not read that. That's
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah.
So one that I like is, it's kind of strange, but I think it's neat, is metabolic control. Again, you must have the talent or the wild talent, as you said, with everything. So this one lets you sort of refine your body's like strength and its function in the wild and such, and you can increase your strength, dex, or con by 1. So it's the other side of the one that he read. And your talent, if your talent die is available, you can take an action to channel this power to nourish yourself for 24 hours. So if you're out of rations, you just be fed.
Yep.
And it's food and water. When you take this action, your talent die decreases by 1 size. Also, if it's available, you can meditate for 1 minute, and at the end of which, during that meditation, you gain the benefits of finishing a short rest, and your talent die decreases by 1. You can't meditate again until you finish a long rest, so you get a quick, short rest without having to take the time. That's my favorite part of it, because you're like, hey man, especially that with things like Warlock and Sorcerer again, recover things on a short rest, or you think even Bard at sometimes, you just, boom, got it back.
Yeah,
that's very, very good.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think, this is definitely something you might want to take as a Warlock, because a short rest, it says that it can be an hour even, but still,
right.
That's you could be attacked in that hour, but you have less chance of running into issues, just meditating
for a minute,
for 1 minute.
You could do this and be like, you're walking along the wilderness, guys, I need literally 1 minute.
Yep. Yeah.
Bam, I have my spell slots back.
Yeah.
That's super awesome.
The other feat that I enjoyed was the telepathic feat. You can increase your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma score to a max of 20. You can telepathically speak to any creature you can see within 30 feet of you. Your telepathic utterances are in a language you know, and the creature understands you only if it knows that language. Your communication does not give the creature the ability to respond to you telepathically. So unlike some of those class features that we discussed, this is one way only. If your talent die is available, you can cast Detect Thoughts, requiring no components. When you start casting the spell, your psionic talent die decreases by 1 size, and your ability for this spell is the one that you increased whenever you took the feat.
That's really neat.
Yeah.
I like that it's one way and that you can do Detect Thoughts. So that's, again, you can use that mechanically in like hostile encounters or RP,
and just have fun.
Yeah, just have fun. Like that's a lot of these are great for both.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like it would be a waste. Sometimes you're like, oh man, I kind of wish I might have taken this other feat or taken it later. These all work. You're a variant human if your game allows. Take one of these potentially. A little later when you get your feat at level 4, your option. If your stats are pretty good, even if they're not, these let you buff stats.
Yeah.
You could take one of these and get the same effect, essentially.
Yeah.
with more variability, and I really like that.
And an increased stat.
Right. I mean, it's a free increase. It's crazy. So the last of these feats, which I really like Metabolic Control, but this one, hands down, my favorite.
Yeah.
Tower of Iron Will. Your mind's defenses are formidable. After you or another creature you can see within 30 feet of you fails a save, you can use your reaction to roll your talent die and add the number rolled to that save, which could potentially cause it to succeed. That is awesome.
Yeah, it is.
Man, the options for that, help your buddy, help yourself. I mean, if you're a paladin or a fighter, you're the guy that's doing the damage, and you're really hoping to not fail this or you're going to be done.
Yep.
Boom, D6, pass.
Yep.
Possibly if you're lucky, or even a D4. That's still pretty good.
And all for a reaction. So
right.
That you can't beat reaction things
man.
in this game.
Anything, spells, the fact that it's a feat that gives you a reaction.
Yeah.
Fantastic. If you're halfling and you have the luck points, you could put that on there and this thing, and there is so much option for any class to take this, because this is the one that isn't buffing your ability stat. You're not, it might not seem as cool because you're not getting a free stat increase, you're not getting a bunch of options, but as a lot of players will know, and us, saves are everything.
Yep.
Will make or break your guy at times, and this gives you a free reroll, essentially, almost.
Yeah.
That's fantastic, because reactions, not everybody gets. I mean, you're always entitled to one, but not everybody has a reactionary ability. This gives you that. This could save your butt.
Yeah.
And it doesn't. I feel that if your class doesn't always give you a reaction, you don't always feel like you had the best turn or a complete turn.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And this fills that gap, because, cool, even if your turn is I didn't really do a lot of damage or anything, but I passed that save, bam, I'm the one that might not have died.
So with all this talk of psionics, that leads me to kind of think that we will probably see some of this implemented into an official Dungeons and Dragons book in the future. Throughout all of this, the first world that they mention when they talk about these things appearing in a D&D game, they mention the world of Athos, which is the Dark Sun world. If you don't know what Dark Sun is, it's an older campaign setting. I believe it came out in 2nd edition.
That sounds right.
It's kind of like a post-apocalyptic kind of world.
It's almost like Dune, if you guys are familiar with that old movie and book series, but mixed with D&D. It's sort of low magic, like you said, a post-apocalyptic. It's kind of quirky and really, really hard. It's brutally hard, I understand. So these things could give you an edge in that world.
If we had to guess, we're probably going to be seeing a Dark Sun book here in the near future, which is great because there has been a lot of people really, really wanting a Dark Sun book. I'd be down for some Dark Sun, especially,
Right. I mean, whether you like settings or not, they can be a little divisive. More books are always great.
Yep.
Official content, fantastic. Pick, choose, steal, whatever from all these settings.
Yeah.
Make your own game, whatever. That's what D&D is about, is making your own stuff. That would be really cool, because I think it would be so different.
Agreed, yeah.
Because, we have the established lore and all these things, and Dark Sun is something you don't hear about enough.
Yeah.
And bringing that back with a better rule set with 5th, I think would go a long way. It would be different than Eberron. It would be different than the Magic the Gathering settings. All of these things are fine and cool, but this is so different that I think it's different enough that people will still get into it being a new player.
So this has been our look at the Unearthed Arcana for the Psionics. Let us know down in the comments below what you think about Psionics. If you think that we're going to get a Dark Sun book, if there's anything that you enjoy about any of the spells, classes, or feats that we talked about today. If you never want to miss a video from us, hit the subscribe button and ring the little bell. We put out a new video every Friday. And until next time, keep the dice rolling.